Sup? Welcome to episode number 137 of the People We Love podcast, and I am Adam Choit. If you're new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, most often comedians, other artists, entertainment types, creative types about their lives and careers. The conversation is casual, but I also ask everyone to highlight the people they love, who they admire, who've influenced them, inspired them, or supported them. For more, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com, at People We Love Podcast on Instagram, on YouTube. If you're watching, you're already there. Please like, subscribe, share the show, follow it, do all those things. I appreciate it. I'm at Adam Choit on Twitter and Instagram if you want to follow me. What else we got here? Positive reviews on Apple Podcasts, of course, are always appreciated. I have another podcast all about the blues, rock, soul powerhouse 12-piece band, Tedeschi Trucks Band. If you're into that type of music, definitely check that out too. At Tedeschi Trucks Podcast on Instagram is probably the easiest way to find that show. Of course, subscribing to it on YouTube and on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on is another way to, of course, find it. TEDESCHI Trucks Podcast. I have a short film out that I wrote and directed also. It's a dystopian psychological satire. TheEditedMovie.com is where you can find that. It's on YouTube. It's free. It's embedded on the website. If you're into those types of things, like movies, you might appreciate this. So please check that out too. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I want to get started with today's episode of this podcast. Today's guest, I jotted down some important things here just to intro him. He's originally from the Philadelphia area. He went to Penn State. He works in PR. He hosts a couple of podcasts, The Boring Pod, BOHRING podcast. He's nodding in the waiting room, I see. And of course is an OG with Lions of Liberty podcast, and his show on the Lions of Liberty network is Mean Age Daydream. It's on Wednesdays. You definitely want to check that out. I'm a loyal subscriber, follower. He's also a stand-up comedian and a dad and a husband and a lot of other things. So let's just get started. Here's Brian McWilliams.
What is happening, Adam? Good to be on.
For sure. We love. Yeah, thank you. I'm proud of that introduction. That was one of my more smooth ones. I mean, obviously, I'm reading and I'm still kind of because it's more like checking off my box, making sure I hit certain things at least. All the things all the podcasting things. But that felt good.
I think you did fantastic, champ. Gold star. Although I will say, it's 137 episodes of People We Love. Is it just people you like? People that you kind of like now? Is that what you're working through to me getting to this point?
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think you were thinking about that. I thought you were thinking, because it's not about who I love. Well, that's kind of what it's turned out to be.
I know, it's who I love.
Right, of course, yeah. But it did start off as like, talk about one person, and that's the podcast, and then a little bit of other stuff. But now it's like, just talk about some people throughout the thing, and I'll cut a clip of you talking about someone else, call it that. But mostly everyone's just talking about their moms and dads.
I know. I was looking through like the other guests, and I'm looking through the titles. I saw Joe Prano was just on. Of course, I love Joe, a very funny comedian and a good bud. And I saw that Joe loves the Mets.
Those are people.
And my team coming on right as the Phillies eliminated the Mets and the Eagles eliminated the Giants. So it's great that I'm following him as the victor in both those scenarios, and now the victor of the back-to-back podcasts. So.
Did the Phillies eliminate the Mets? They just won the division. They won the division?
They won the division, yeah.
Right,
they won the division.
Right. The Mets eliminated themselves. The Mets
exactly.
The Mets were going to find a way.
They eliminated by virtue of the season-long competition that is baseball.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask how you're doing during whatever year this is, and I think it's one of the newer ones. And also, I know, talking sports already, we can dive into that. Obviously, the Eagles are in the upcoming NFC Championship game. We're recording this, Thursday, and that's this upcoming Sunday. So that's exciting. Yeah. Things must be good for you. Things seem like they're good for you from afar. Is that the case?
Yeah. I would say so. It's interesting, as you mentioned, I'm a father of two. I have a 3-year-old daughter whose birthday party is this weekend. And that was stressful in its own right because she had pink eye. She got pink eye this week. Like Monday, daycare calls are like, oh, by the way, your daughter's eye's pink. Take her to the doctor. We're like, oh, dear God. We're going to have to cancel this party, lose the deposits. It's going to be a whole nightmare. It turned out to be fine. It's just 2 people had to hold her down to get these eye drops in her eyes as she's screaming bloody murder. So that was on the downside. But otherwise, yeah, the sporting thing is great. My wife and I figured out how to juggle the kids now. I'm looking forward to the Eagles winning, and things are going well. The year is going well. I'll say that. It's young, but so far, the freshly christened year of the rabbit looks like it's going to be, carrots and bunny sex, which is fantastic.
That sounds good. You knew it was the rabbit. Yeah, I had heard that as well. The Chinese New Year is the year of the rabbit. I forget what all the differences are. Yeah, it sounds like trying to give medicine to a cat, like
yeah,
or like a pet, like a pet that's fighting back. It's kind of like what I'm picturing. She's squirming and yelling. It's like trying to take a cat to the vet that doesn't really want to be there.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, there's a shocking amount of muscles that you don't know exist that the child can twitch at any point to try to throw the eye drop. Trying to get an eye drop into your own eye is challenging enough as an adult. Trying to get it a kid, though, it's just shaking, shimmering, yelling, screaming, twisting. It was unbelievably difficult. It's like to the point where I was just like, should we just strap her outside, just strap her in the sun and let her bake like an old school torture until she's just sapped of all energy, and then we'll just go out and drop it in. Just dry her eyes out like raisins until she's begging for it. And then, and as you can tell, I'm a great, great father.
of course. Do they always get pink eye is it from sticking your finger in your butt and then your eyes? Is that kind of like what is always
I hope
from?
not. I really hope not. I'm hoping that she, was chasing the dog around and the dog stopped short and she just rammed her eyes into the dog's asshole.
Right. It's always a butt to eye connection.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, I don't think she's farting on her pillow. I don't think she's jamming her finger up her asshole and rubbing at her eyes, but I'm not around her all day long to occupy this. And I don't want to be one of those helicopter parents that's constantly checking my kids' fingers and buttholes.
What's her name? Does that count as doxing if I ask that or no?
No, it's fine. So I've got my older daughter is named Logan and my younger daughter is named Vale. Not named after the city of Vale, not named after the Vale in the Game of Thrones, Vale. Just thought it sounded nice.
Yeah. Not Jewish. Oh, well, your wife is Jewish.
No, my wife is Scottish. No, she doesn't have the accent, but her family is heavily Scottish. And we had some Jewish blood marry in, but when my grandfather passed away, she kind of went her way, and I haven't really seen her that much after that.
Gotcha. I think we should get into your life and your background, your history, because otherwise I'll just keep asking crazy questions and a lot of dumb questions about like parenting and all this stuff and kids, because it's like a whole nother different world to me. But why don't you tell me about your background and where you grew up, and we'll get into it. Like, what do you like? Even earliest memories is kind of what I ask people. Usually it's sounds or something traumatic or something good. It's usually something extreme or not.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I mean, I have a couple memories. There's one that's very traumatic. I can recall. There's one that I swear I'm not sure if I juxtaposed something I saw on video with something that I remember, but there was a video that I remember my father put together, and it has the Superman. Well, let me backtrack. So yeah. I have a father and a mother. They're still together. My father, Jamie, grew up as a military brat moving around, but we ended up settling in a town called Yardley, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia. And he was a good dad. It still is a good dad. Funny. That's where I get a lot of my sense of humor from. He worked in the entertainment industry. Actually, he was a sportscaster for several years, which is where you get the sportscaster tones in my voice. And my mom was a teacher for, 35, 40 years, taught second grade. So, a stable household. I have a sister that's 2 years younger than me. I can tell you the stories about beating her hitting me hitting her. And we can get to that. But
I have the same stories. I think yeah.
I mean, I will say she was good at, as sisters are, she was very good at pushing my buttons. I'll tell you the worst thing I ever did to her was one day she came up to me and I think punched me in the back of the head, and it was the middle of winter time. And her move was to do this and run to get our parents, but she couldn't get to our parents fast enough, so she ran out the front door of the house. Just so happened there were two plastic ice scrapers, sitting on the stairs that were near the front door of our house. I picked one up, And like the scene out of The Last of the Mohicans, I whipped this ice scraper at her, and I got her dead center in the back like a tomahawk and took her out. So that's the worst thing I ever did to my sister.
That's not that bad, and that's very
Yeah.
that's very accurate. You know, how long I've been in California. When you said ice scraper, I was like having trouble for a second, like picturing
Picturing it.
what that was. I'm like, an ice scraper. Was that like a big like rake thing? I'm like, what the fuck is
It's
an ice scraper?
it's like a triangle of plastic,
Yeah, I
basically,
know.
with a handle. Yeah.
I got there in my mind.
I just had to scrape the ice off my car with a credit card like 3 days ago in
Yeah.
California. But
So no, I was gonna
yeah,
ask.
go.
So in elementary school, it sounds like maybe you and your sister were kind of rambunctious. Like, what you were. I'm guessing that you were pretty much the same you throughout your entire life. You just seemed like somebody. You seem like an authentic person. I will say that.
Well, I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult, depending
I
on
don't
where
think
you're
it's
coming from.
either. I don't
Yeah,
think it's. I think that's what I was getting at. It just is, for better or
yeah.
worse. And the same for a lot of us. I'll include myself maybe in the same.
Well, I'd say that's. I mean, yeah, that's fair. I've always been similar. As I said, my father was funny, and there was a lot of joking. So I was always a jokey guy. Growing up, I was tall and lanky, and I guess maybe a little bit, like most people are, a little bit self-conscious about that, but I always got through by being funny and smart, right? Those are my two things. So I was, class clown and avoided a lot of fights in that manner. I think I only had gotten a couple fights when I was coming up all through high school, had a good high school experience. But I will tell you this, as you can see, and if you're anybody watching on the video, I am very bald. So I'm 43 years old now. I am completely bald for the most part on top. And my father's bald. I started losing my hair at age 16, right? So that I think led to every personality trait that was kind of, being the funny guy, being confident. That I'd say forced me into being far more confident than I think I ever was. And because at 16, you only have two choices, and it's sink or swim, right? You can either get into a ball of depression where you're like, Jesus, I can't believe this happened to me. Why, God? And I legitimately prayed and also tried to make deals with the devil. I shit you not. Tried to make deals with Satan and didn't work.
To get hair back?
I would pray to whoever would listen. Yes, I like, hey, Satan, are you out there? I'm talking to you. Are you there? Yeah, because I mean, I'm 16 years old, man. It's freakish to start losing your hair, and it was losing it right up. The widow's peak started to come in, and then by the time I turned 21, I had to start shaving my head. So
Yeah, it's a little. I could see it being scary a little bit, because you might think, what's happening to me? Something weird is happening to you. Maybe a real health scare. But obviously,
yeah,
I guess it was never any sort of health scare.
no, just it was just a ego scare, is what it was. And I remember my dad going, "Look, don't worry about it. They're gonna have a cure for this thing in like a couple of years with the way science is going." Meanwhile,
Yeah.
flash forward 30 years and I still don't have a hair. So good lying, but no, I think that helped kind of mold me into who I am. And as you said, it's you get what you get with me, and a lot of that just comes from the fact that you got to put it out all on the table, and if people don't like it, then they don't like it.
If you know your mom's father, your grandfather, was he bald, or did he have hair?
He definitely was balding, and I'm trying to remember because I didn't really know him that well. He died when I
I
was
think
very
that's where it
young.
comes from, the hair for the men. If it's from the mother's father, and
Yeah,
I'm sure that your dad being bald probably did not help
no,
the
certainly didn't.
genetics.
Yeah, meanwhile, my grandpa had a full silver mane until he was, until he died.
On your dad's side.
On my dad's side, yeah.
Right, exactly. It's funny.
That's why every time I see my mother now, to this day, I go, "Damn your birth canal for giving me this head of hair."
Yeah.
She doesn't
But
like
she's
it.
damning her mom's birth canal about some other stuff.
Oh, without a doubt, she is. What's
Maybe
funny?
more so. Much when the women, maybe. I don't know.
I'll tell you just an odd, funny thing about my mom. So my mom, her first name is Elaine, and when I was at age roughly 35, I'm going, seeing her, and I would think, okay, her name's Elaine. I would call it Elaine. At the age 35, she finally corrected me and said, "Brian, my name is Elaine." And I went, "All right, well, thank you. You could have told me that any time in the last 35 years, Mom, and I would have corrected it." She waited 35 years she waited to correct my pronunciation of her name. So
That's
my mom's all
inspiring.
passive aggressive.
No, I find it inspiring, to be honest with you, because there's so many things that I feel like, and we all have these relationships with friends, family, coworkers. It's like we can't ask them about that thing. It's like, why would you
Yeah.
ask that now? Why wouldn't you have asked them that thing like 30 years ago? It's too late. No one's. It'll be weird if I bring it up. And your
Yeah, true.
mom like broke the matrix by she snapped at you. She snapped one day.
She was probably just out of other things to bitch at me about. She's like, well, he seems like he's doing pretty well. I know what I got. I got the old ace in the hole here. Whip that one out.
That is an amazing way to look at that. And you're I think you're right too. No, that's like some like what do you call it? Positive thinking, or I don't know. There's longer, more complicated words for describing that type of like mentality. It's good. It's good. What about in like other things in elementary school? You're like it's probably a sports guy and whatnot. And what were you into? You're playing musical instruments, singing, or you're like a rapper and breakdancing. What was
Not
kid?
in
What else was
elementary.
kid? What was kid Brian McWilliams up to besides the things you've already mentioned? Throwing.
You know what?
Winter tools.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. The winter sports are huge. No. I
too.
spent most of my time when I was in elementary school writing. I always was writing a lot. I'd write stories about the Transformers or whatever. I'd draw. I was pretty good at drawing, and so at one point in my life, I thought I was going to be an artist. I got big into comic books. Very good at drawing the characters. So I draw a lot, and I'd make up my own stories and read them to my mom. There was a lot of going out bicycling. Like my generation was very much go outside and you go home after school. And I was a latchkey kid. So I probably as early as maybe fourth or fifth grade, get off the bus, go let myself in the house. And, we would go from elementary and into middle school, we'd just get on our bikes and walk around or go pedal around and intentionally try to get lost in places, go to neighborhoods we hadn't been to, try to get lost, find our way out. That was the game. So it was a lot of outdoor activity, building forts in the woods, hiding playboys. That was, of course, not elementary school, but, middle school. So, yeah, it was a lot of outdoor activity, and I didn't really get into formal sports. I played, I guess, baseball, and then took a little break to be a nerd for a while. Played like my friends were into D&D, which I wasn't really that into, but, it was interesting. You use your mind. You get your creative aspect going, and then I kind of got back into sports, but it was always a very much the two worlds, I guess, separate, but also in my mind equal. Like I like being an athlete. I like going out and being very active, but I also did enjoy a lot of that creative, where can your mind take you type of thing, using my imagination and kind of going to places that are fantastic and unusual.
Yeah, so much of that I think I can relate to be honest. Like that was like kind of describing a lot of what my childhood I think was like. And even the riding the bikes thing, I remember like in first grade, like shortly after I first got my training wheels off, our neighborhood was kind of like you could go around, you could go on the side, even riding on the sidewalk, you could go all the way around. And but that probably what ended up being like a mile or a couple of miles or something when you circle around. And I remember doing that like once or twice before we moved, and that being like this big thing, at least in my mind, at least something that I remember, like, and being the latchkey and all that. Like, and you can't get lost anymore because of phones and internet and people kind of got smarter because of the navigation. Maybe people are remembering directions more, maybe less. I don't know, but because of navigation, there's no more of that. Like that, hearing you talk about that, it made me like want to be like first grade me riding around, run on my bike or whatever. Like,
it was just such a pure entertainment, right? A pure sense of let's see what's out there, right? You feel like an explorer because you're constantly, and once you get comfortable, like you said, riding around your neighborhood, you establish your perimeter and you go, okay, let's push the perimeter, right? That was at least my instinct as a kid. Let's see just a little bit how much farther I could go. And I never felt, danger or that I was being disrespectful of like parents' boundaries or anything like that. But I think it's in your nature as a kid. You always want to go and explore and see what's out there. And it's a little bit farther beyond, the fog of war of your neighborhood. And it was just like such pure joy to have that thrill of being on your own as a kid. I think that so many kids now like lose that because they're never on their own. throughout their entire lives, they're never really on their own. There's always
Or
some
offline.
connection, or offline, yeah,
which
with
is
the
not
phone and with everything else, yeah.
No, for sure. And adults the same, I think, lose that sense of childhood wonderment and curiosity and wanting to desire for exploration and going on journey. I think that can be lost. I don't think you've lost it entirely. I think through all the things that you're working on, and both in your professional and personal life, I think feed that fulfillment and the creative juices in a lot of ways. Like, do you feel, I feel like I'm the same way. It's like, I don't know, people lose that sense of childhood wonderment and, like, I don't know, and fall victim to nihilism, pessimism,
Yeah.
Being jaded, all these things, and losing curiosity. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you,
It's
man,
hard. I get it though.
it's hard. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing now is directly tied into a little bit of a resuscitative aspect that having kids has on, at least has on me. In When you have these little kids, you're doing things that are simplistic and you haven't done since you were a kid. And building with blocks and reading and playing with toys and just playing make believe, because it really does. It revitalizes your outlook on the world. And this is what I tell my friends who are thinking about having kids or not. And I think everybody should, if not force you, but if you can do it, it's an amazing experience, because it really gives you a entirely renewed perspective on the world, because you see everything they experience almost as if it's the first time for you, because it's been so long since you were there. And in that vein, you want to take part in your kid's life. You want to play the game with them. You want to be involved in this, this world that they're creating. And it's just so much fun to get in there and pretend. We just did, my daughter and I did The Floor is Lava for the first ever time about 2 weeks ago. And
that's self-explanatory.
Yeah. That is, and it was so much fun. And she was just over the moon, and she just got so into it. The ability for kids to lose themselves in the moment and in that imagination is something that we definitely lose as adults. And it's helped me creatively to open up my writing, to open up my thinking, to open up everything I'm trying to do, because it's unlocked some neural pathways that I had either closed off or I've clogged up with, alcohol and other substance abuse over the years. So it's pushing down those boundaries again. And it's just really become a real sense of joy and wonder.
That's incredible. That's cool. That's cool to hear. Do you find that other parents are expressing similar sentiments to you, or you're just able to? You have a good attitude about the whole about your life and parenting and all this. It seems like, obviously there's ups and downs and everyone has their moments.
Yeah, I say you should have seen me 2 months ago, man. When I had my baby was like a month and a half old and wouldn't stop screaming all night. I'm just sitting there going, I regret everything. No, I think a lot of other parents do get that sense. Again, the reliving moments and seeing it. I think they do get that. I don't know as far as, unlocking the kind of creativity and that type of thing. I think that it depends on where your perspective is and what you're working on. A lot of people probably can't apply that in their general lives as much as, say, I do with, public relations or with the podcast or with screenwriting, because you and I are both, screenwriters. That kind of stuff is, I think, really valuable when you have kids to open it up. And it's actually, I have a kid's book I wrote because I wanted to. I remember something distinctly, and there's something my sister and I would joke about. My father always had these stupid phrases. I'm sure yours did too. If wishes were horses, beggars would ride, and just all these stupid phrases that are passed along to annoy the living crap out of your children. But I remember they also, in addition to these dumb phrases, my mom and dad would always drive into my head that, look, as bad as things are, they'll get better. Just remember, just go to bed, no matter how bad and evil and dark the world might seem, go to bed, wake up the next morning. I guarantee you it'll be better. And I always took that as them not only giving me encouragement, but making sure that I, as their kid, would never think about committing suicide, or self-harm.
You think that's what they were thinking?
100%. 100%.
Why do you think that? Or is it just why isn't it just that they love you and they're trying to express that? It's actually that like specific in a sense.
I think, I think it was that specific. I think it had something to do with probably some sort of main, corporate media news reporting that was going on about, young suicides. That's
Oh,
my
yeah.
presumption.
They were
Right?
watching 2020.
Probably. Like if we're being honest,
Yeah.
that's probably what it was. And it came out that way. But now I look at what's going on with social media and the trends, and it's gotten much worse than ever. With young people taking their own lives and bullying and all this other stuff online.
Fucking
And I look at it
insane.
and I say, this is something I have to pass on to my kids. So I actually wrote a book which was taken from a blog post when I was depressed. I wrote a blog called "When Looking Up, Everything is Bright." The concept being, if you're at the bottom of the pit, you have nowhere to look but up, and guess what? It's going to be brighter when you're looking up, right? So just remember that it's brighter when you're looking up. You're going to be okay. So I wrote a book with that title, but it's more of a fantasy book about a little girl who falls down and down and down and down and down and down, and then has to pick herself up and is confident it's going to be okay. I just have to push forward. So that kind of thing. Would I have written that book if I didn't have a daughter? Probably not. Would I have thought about that aspect of things if I didn't have children and delivering that message? Probably not. So that's just an example of kind of the creativity that comes from that, and the desire to pass something along, which is that much stronger now, to keep your kids safe and to keep other kids safe.
And that's a great message and a great project. And like, I think adults will probably get more out of it than than you
They
might
might.
be thinking. Because like you're saying, like you're relearning things, and one thing you're maybe relearning is um, obvious ways to get out of a rut. And then sometimes it is just looking up. And it's funny because I'm thinking about literally like looking up, like physically looking up and having like, because then you get more into literal posture and health
Mhm. Yeah.
and fixing your body and getting, and if you're standing up correctly and your posture is good, you're getting proper, you're breathing more properly. So it's, and that will affect your whole outlook, like the body and the mind. There's all like interconnections. So it's more than just like a figure of speech. I don't think my parents really had many of those, though, to be honest with you.
No.
Did they? I don't know. Like maybe it'll, when I hear them, it'll come back. I'm
I,
I'm
I
not
I'm
remembering in the moment. Maybe.
I'm trying to think of more of them. My sister and I actually we have a good relationship, even though we fought younger. We have a very close relationship now. She's also very funny, and we had a blog called bathingtogether.com based off the two of us bathing in the same bathtub as kids. But we had a blog post that I wish I could bring it up, but listing all of them, and it was annoying things my father said to me. But yeah, it was like, wishes were horses, beggars would ride. It was, never look a gift horse in the mouth. It was, if when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Oh
That one I
God,
know.
there's got to be 4 or 5 other real, and they're even more annoying than those. And if I think of them during the podcast, I'll just yell them out randomly because it's driving me nuts. I can't think of more of them. But
These are
yeah,
all
he
the
just
hardest. These are all the hardest things when people are trying to learn English. All these idioms,
yeah.
like because we take them all for granted, and even sometimes Americans are dumb and don't even know them. So when you're trying to
Yeah.
learn English, it's like, what the hell are these people talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of slang for the languages. That's right. It's actually amazing though how many foreigners learn English just from now. I was blown away. I went to Austria for a conference for the Austrian Economics Center, and there was a girl who was just a waitress at one of the bars we were at. I thought she was American. Her accent was perfect. Her English was perfect. And I said, "Oh, where are you from in the States?" And she goes, "Oh, no, I'm from here." And I went, "How do you learn English?" She goes, "Oh, watching Netflix."
Yep.
And they know the slang. They know it's like amazing. Who needs Rosetta Stone? These kids are just watching Netflix and they're learning completely. You can't tell the difference between her and then your next door neighbor. It's amazing.
Well, it is foreign countries. They just don't make content as scripted content as good as Americans. So that's why we're all dumb and think anyone who speaks 2 or more languages is a wizard. To
That's
Americans,
true.
if you speak 2, 3, 4 languages, we think it's like some kind of sorcery magic. This person could
Yeah.
do that.
Meanwhile, we don't start teaching our kids language until like 8th grade when it's already too late. It's by
I
eighth
think
grade, it's way too late to learn language. Well, at least it'd be naturalistic and have it come easily.
Yeah, I think of this country as kind of an island in a lot of ways, and we can get into that. But I want to hear just a little bit more about like high school and getting into Penn State, and a
Yeah,
little
sure.
bit more of the chronology.
Yeah, well, my high school, so I went to Pennsbury and, good school, big school, about 830 in my graduating class. So very, very large school. And yeah, it was an odd utopia. I didn't really have a lot of bad experiences. Just that I was a big guy and I was funny. So there were a couple of times where maybe I got in a little bit of scuffles. Somebody's being a little bit of a dick. But I was able to kind of walk. And this is not just me. It was an interesting way in which the school is set up, and that there were still the jocks and the popular kids and the dorky kids and all this, but everybody kind of just got along interchangeably. There wasn't really this separation of bullying. There weren't people getting shoved into lockers. There wasn't, and for a school that size is very surprising. But it was something where, to give you an example, my senior year, I was hanging out. There's the cool kids I was friends with and my dork friends I was friends with. And we merged those two worlds because the cool kids still were interesting, funny guys, and they wanted to do this thing called Odyssey of the Mind. Now, are you familiar with this? Have you ever heard of it?
Maybe not.
It is a creative competition that I had done when I was much younger, actually in, I think, sixth grade. And you go and they give you a problem or several problems. You have to come up with the most creative ways to solve it. And it's a competition, right? And you go compete against other schools. So you have teams of like eight kids. Our senior year, we had all done this, and the cool kids and the dorks kid, let's make an Odyssey of the Mind team. Let's go compete again, and we did. And the other odd thing about my high school was that it was very, very metro in that everybody was completely fine with being gay and going up and putting your hand in the back of some other guy's pants and playing around gay, and people were actually gay, and it just was, I don't know, it was very kumbaya. Everybody just got along. So it was a bizarre experience in that way, because everything that I've been taught about high school from television told me to expect something completely different. Street gang warfare, and it just wasn't that. So it was great, man.
Yeah, your high school was a little bit more gay than mine, it sounds like, for sure.
Yeah. Yes,
I think
would
my
say
high
so.
school, looking back, it was reasonably peaceful that I recall. I think you had elements of some of those negative stereotypes with high schools, just enough to give you a high school experience. But
Mhm.
overwhelmingly, like I don't think like I think people sat in different sections in the cafeteria. But if you went over to some other group, it wasn't like they would like pull out their knife or like be like, "What the fuck are you talking to me right now for?"
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
We had none of that. It was just, I don't know, none of that. And I got into acting in high school. I was a thespian and got into that. Traveled around with the theater troupe of Pennsbury, and actually the one teacher that I had throughout my entire schooling that really meant something to me. This is somebody I do love. And sadly passed away though before I could hang out with him as an adult,
No, I'm
which
sorry.
was sad. But he was a Mr. Hallman, Bill Hallman, and I had him for eighth grade social studies, which was still a class then. I don't know if they have that anymore. But he was also the theater director of the middle school, and I remember he had just an unbelievably great sense of humor, very wry, very dry, very to the point. But I remember in this class, we were at social studies, and he literally comes up, and I'm going to sound like a douchebag saying this. People are going to roll their eyes, but I swear to God, it's true. He comes up to my best friend and I, who had the class together, and he goes, "Look, you guys are too smart for this class, what we're doing. Go do another project. Let me know what you want to work on, and we'll do that. We'll figure something out." So we're like, "Oh, great." So we did that because it was just, geography and maps bullshit. So he took a shining to us, and I became very friendly, with him, and he mentored me as an actor for a little while, and then we stayed in touch, just kind of, joking around. I'd see him when I would see him around campus, and I actually reconnected with him on Facebook after I graduated several years later. After I moved to Los Angeles, I saw Bill Hallman. I said, "Oh shit!" So I messaged him. We start to talk and catch up, and sadly, as I said, we were going to hang out if I got back to my hometown, and my parents don't live there anymore, and my sister doesn't. So he passed away about 4 years ago before we could actually get together and have a drink. But we'd had a very long Facebook conversations, and it was a rare. I'd say of all the teachers, I said the one guy that really made an impact that was palpable and tangible and gave me a different outlook was Bill Hallman. So,
wow,
yeah,
very
so
cool.
he got me into the acting world. Yeah.
Wow, I appreciate you sharing that. And the reason I was laughing as you were telling me that he passed away is because I was just thinking like that's kind of like even my experience to some degree. I remember I had like a media arts teacher who I got along with, not the relationship that you had or nearly as inspiring and helpful personally, but like elements of that. But like, yeah, like most high school teachers are not very memorable, and you don't have that personal connection with them. And I'm trying not to say that in a judgmental way, but well, you know what? I will.
It's true, man.
I'll blame the system. We're going to blame the system for that one. How about that? So I won't even put it on the teachers, because it's all about incentives, obviously, as we know with anything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do think there's a lot of that happens where, there's no incentive to be great because there's nothing really, there's no threat if you're not great. And it takes special people that really love what they're doing. And maybe, like I said, maybe it's him finding a couple kids that he goes, all right, these kids are different, and that's where he gets entertained. fighting two doofuses that make him laugh, and they go, hey, doofuses,
right?
Go do a project over here.
Yeah, you were giving him something new to make the job a little bit more interesting for him versus like seeing these droning children who are just wanting to go to lunch and play football, whatever. Like, I don't know, just go, not be in class, be anywhere else.
That way, all of us don't have to just go through the motions. Yeah. So, you asked about Penn State. So actually, getting to acting, that's what got me into Penn State main campus.
What inspired you to get into acting in the first place? It sounds like your personality type in a lot of ways leading up to acting, but was there a moment? Was there an act? Like what you said you like comics, but what kind of, were you into movies or comedy at that point in high school or anything like that also?
Good question. That leads us back actually to my father. So my father, really, really impactful on my life in many ways. My mother was too in a different fashion, but my father, also was an actor. He was in Man of La Mancha back when he was in his younger days. He also went to Penn State, as did I'm about 3 generations deep in Penn State. Everybody on my father's side of the family all went to Penn State, so I had that connection. But he would, when I was coming up, he would often find movies. This is back when he had TV Guide. We had HBO. We had the set-top box and the HBO that you got through the little black cheat box. And he would spot and say, okay, this is a great movie. He was a big movie buff. He went to Temple for film. And as I said, worked in the industry and was his own producer and had his own company. So called Image Makers International. So he would, say, all right, you stay up late and you watch these movies, and it would be kind of our bonding thing. We'd watch movies together. And sometimes my sister would watch. Most of the time she'd be off kind of doing her own thing. And through that, I had a real appreciation for film and comedy. We'd watch a lot of, the old comic relief specials when they were on HBO. And we'd watch Dennis Miller together when he had his HBO show. And, of course, Norm Macdonald was a regular, one of my all-time favorite comedians of all time. Probably my absolute favorite comedian is Norm Macdonald. Rest in peace. So that, again, all very much crafted and shaped my passion for comedy, my passion for film, for stand-up humor, and shaped a lot of what I find funny, and even probably the delivery of how I talk. So that led me into acting, and I'll never forget my first play I was in was Fiddler on the Roof. I was Fiedka the Russian, who falls in love with the Jewish girl, and one of the earlier shows, my parents come and I come off stage and I'm all excited and I go, all right, what do you think, Dad? And my dad goes, you weren't that great. And he was being completely honest with me, by the way. And I was like, what an asshole. Thank you, Dad. What a dick.
Wow.
But it made me get better.
Was there any constructive criticism ensuing?
I'm sure there was. This was in a busy lobby, so I think later on I was like, "What the fuck?" What do you mean? But there was later, and he would give me some constructive criticism, and throughout my life has given me constructive criticism, even to my latest podcast. He'll give me constructive criticism. So,
It means you're
but
listening.
yeah, well, I mean, look, I give him credit because one of the problems I have with a lot of parents today, and probably the previous couple generations, is they don't tell their kids their honest truth. And you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, but at the same time, it's going to make your kid either get better, work harder, and get stronger and be able to take criticism, which it seems nobody can do now, or they might just suck and they should do something else. If my daughter sucks balls at something, I'm going to be like, look, honey, maybe try something different. You worked hard on this and it's not working out. Do something else. So I appreciate him for that.
No, I still appreciate my parents for their honesty, for sure. And I guess what we like, or even other generations probably would like, and what would be best is the message being delivered in a certain way, with certain words, with a certain sensitivity. But the message of "you suck at this" or "you are not good," it needs to be told when it needs to be told, especially if it's the objective truth and consensus, if there is one, for whatever.
It's like breaking up with somebody. You can stay in a bad relationship for years, and because you're too scared to tell the person that you're not right and you're not feeling it. Better to break it off early, and that's always been my philosophy as well. Be honest, break it off early. Look, this ain't gonna work out.
Hey man, I'm working on it. We're working on these things. Easier said than done.
It always is easier said than done.
oh no. Tell me about, I guess, Penn State.
So acting got me into Penn State, as I mentioned. I tried out for the acting program, got accepted, but they wanted to make me go to a branch campus. And Penn State is unbelievably hard to get into on the main campus, as many schools are that have, a massive amount of people applying to them. I got lucky in that my SATs weren't bad. I think I had like 1,300 or 1,320 or something like that. My GPA wasn't great, like a 3.6, I think, something like that. Again, not fantastic, but I'm like thinking, state school, what? It should be easy, I got accepted every other school I applied to except Penn State, which said you had to go to a branch campus. So fortunately, my father and my grandfather and my uncle and my dead uncle had all gone to Penn State. So, we were able to say, my dad said, look, kids, fifth generation, there's going to be, the McWilliamses are deep at Penn State, can you get them to main campus? So I was not going to go to a branch campus. I said, I'll go to another school. I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And fortunately they said, fine. Yep. Okay. Come in, do summer session, which was awesome. Got to learn the campus, got to hang out with some of the idiot football players, and kind of made a lot of my best friends that summer that were through me the entire college. And to this day, Rico, who you are familiar with, and Mark, they were both there at the same time, that summer session. So acting got me in. I was an acting major at Penn State for a couple of years. The first year, fine. I didn't like a lot of the acting people. I've never liked people in the acting sphere. They're very annoying. They're very needy. They're very insecure. And I
wish that was just a stereotype, but I don't really think it is a stereotype. It seems to be a general. I don't know, not necessarily, but like there's
99% accurate. I'm telling you. I mean, just like the old trope about don't date an actress. 100% don't date an actress. Did that.
I like to work with comedians who can act. Or comedians who are actors.
Yeah. They turn out to be better actors anyway because they're more empathetic. They have to connect with the audience, where actors usually don't.
I agree. I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that, but I think there is something to that.
I mean, it is. Yeah, actors, you're reading to a camera, you're reading to a stage, you're performing. You're there to listen to you, and that's it. There's no feedback. And as a comedian, you have feedback, so you got to be iterative. You got to have people empathize with you. But acting, I got out of it to move into writing, and that was something that was building. And I finished as a writing major, English major with emphasis on writing. But I'll tell you the story that broke me for acting, which is that there was a guy at Penn State who was best known for two things: being the black guy in a Scope commercial from the 80s, in which there was a black couple lying in bed. They wake up, the wife goes to kiss the husband, who, of course, has terrible breath. They both have terrible breath, and he goes, "Oh, no, baby, no, no, no," and he covers his mouth. Now, I guarantee somebody out there listening will remember this commercial, because it is burned into my memory. That's the one thing he's known for. The other thing is for being an FBI agent in like 15 movies. But again, Die Hard, Die Hard 2 he was in. It's like, but again, minor roles, nothing that should be inspiring or that should give this man an ego.
This was a teacher or a colleague?
This is a teacher.
Or who was this?
This is a teacher. And I can't remember his name, or I would tell it to you right now. I can see his face because it's burned in my memory because I hate him so much. So this guy hated me. I don't know why, hated me. I had great, straight A's up to this point. I get to this guy's class, and I remember he hated me so much that he made me stop a scene, which was supposed to be at me sneaking into a bedroom, and waking somebody up. He stopped it because it was bad acting to him that my feet were cracking as I crept forward, as if I can control the cracking of my feet bones. That was this asshole. So he gives me a B minus, I think, or a C plus in his class. You needed a B to move forward in the acting program as a whole. And when that happened, I just said, screw this. I'm out. I don't need to deal with a-holes like this and his ego and his stupidity. I'm over it. So left acting, went into writing, and never really looked back. I did one play out here in LA called Horse Country, written by the great C.J. Hopkins. Highly recommend C.J. Hopkins' writing, by the way. And never looked back. That's it.
That's fucked up, and that's unfortunate. And I've talked to a few people and had maybe some similar experiences where you have a teacher who's so awful for whatever reason that they turn the kid off to the student off to the whatever the interest is, the field is, the whatever the activity thing, to the point where it's like you're almost like instead of inspiring creativity, you're whatever the opposite. Is there a word for that? I don't know, but that's what they're doing, and that's
extinguishing
wrong.
Extinguishing
right.
Creativity. Exactly. Yeah.
That does not seem like that should be the role of a teacher.
It does not, and yet it was for this man. It was almost like he had only achieved a certain level of success, and he almost was seeking out to stop anybody from surpassing that level that took his class.
People do that shit subconscious. Do people do that shit subconsciously, or is it just like it becomes their personality almost? Like they do it. That's what their gut. That's what they develop an instinct to behave in that way.
Yeah,
Fuck that.
I think it is. It's subconscious. I'll tell you another one.
We got to get that guy back.
We should get him on
buying
the show.
Listerine, by buying Listerine and competitive brands.
Yeah.
Is that going to help? No, too late.
By Kirkland Generic. Yeah. So I went into writing. One other funny thing, I never became a poet for a similar reason. I had an asshole teacher at Penn State in my poetry class, and he assigned a poem, and he said, interpret the poem. So I went home. I did this very interesting interpretation of the poem, not taking anything literally. Turned it in, and he gave me a D on it. And I said, what the fuck, man? I said, I interpreted it. It's an opinion. I gave you my interpretation. I did the work. How did you give me a D? And he goes, well, I don't agree with your interpretation. And I literally, in front of the entire class, I crumpled the paper up in his face. I threw it in the trash can. I went, fuck you. And I rocked out of the class. And I never went back, and he gave me a D. So he didn't fail me. But
that's awesome.
It's an interpretation. It's an interpretation. What are you doing? You can't tell me it's wrong. That's kind of idiots you deal with at times.
I have a theory. You know what I think the theory is? My theory is that you have this acting teacher, and then you have this poetry teacher, and then you have you who doesn't really fit the stereotypical mold of maybe a theater student, an acting student, or a poet. They envision someone who maybe dresses, presents, and speaks, and acts and moves in a certain manner or way. I'm not saying you're a gay man. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying that you don't fit the mold, and the fact that you're not that and you're good at these things. is an affront, if that's the right word, to these people. In the same way that,
That's a flattering way to take it. I'll agree with it. Sure, I think so too.
I don't like people who take advantage of their power.
I agree,
and that's what happened in these cases.
I think that they are in that position specifically to take advantage of their power. I think it is legitimately, like you're saying, a subconscious effort to suppress certain people certain ways, and I think that it is clearly the only way they can feel intellectually fulfilled is by giving somebody a D on an interpretive paper because it's not their interpretation, because that's their intellectual superiority, and that's how they get the rocks off at the end of the day.
At least everyone's not this way, I guess, in life. So that's that's something. So I guess we graduated from Penn State, and then where do we go from there?
Pretty much straight to LA. I was home for a few months. A buddy of mine from college, I was at a fraternity called Phi Kappa Tau, and a buddy of mine was in LA, and he said, "Hey, I need a roommate. You want to come out?" And I moved out here to chase the writing dream, which never, well, I can't say never, still chasing the writing dream. But yeah, I moved out here in 2003 and got into doing public relations just because I desperately needed a job. Had no money. I was cooking in a kitchen for a while. I spent a lot of time cooking in country clubs all through college, cooked at Hooters, and that was not paying the bills enough. So I got a job as an intern with Michael Levine, who was a publicist most famous for representing Michael Jackson at one point, and he had insured, and this is genius, he had insured Mary Hart, former Entertainment Tonight host with John Tesh, her legs. And it was a huge
I think I remember this
thing. Yeah, it was a huge thing. So I was his assistant. First I was an intern, then he hired me on as his assistant. And we had an interesting relationship in which he was one of these guys you see in movies, right? Like Ari on Entourage, kind of abusive and, very much like that old Hollywood was how these guys all acted. And I was not down with that. And I was his assistant, but he and I would get into fucking shouting matches. And I would, be like, I'm not doing that shit. Don't talk to me that way. But for some odd reason, he liked me enough not to fire me. And eventually promoted me because I said, I don't want to be your assistant anymore. Promote you somewhere else if you want to keep me, put me somewhere else in the business. And he put me as a junior publicist, and I worked my way up to the point where I eventually got offered a VP position with my old president who had left, and then I left the company, and now I'm VP at a different place. So, PR sucks. I'll be honest; it's a shitty career. It's mostly full of pretty imbeciles doing a bad job. But as a writer who had moved here to write, there's a lot of aspects of public relations which are stimulating creatively because you're finding a solution to a problem. How do you sell something no one wants to buy, right? So you can have a lot of fun trying to tie that into different things that are happening in the culture, in the news cycle, coming up with ideas that are, completely your own, and finding your fun in that way. But it is a rough career though, because you can work your ass off all day long for a week and have nobody in the media give a flying shit about your client or the product and get fired, and that can be very depressing. But still, it's got its perks. When you have good clients, when they're happy, they get the exposure, and you're working hard, and everybody's happy. It's very fulfilling in that way, especially if people are doing good work. So,
I think when that guy Michael Levine, I think when you yell back at him, I think he likes that because that's like his language. Like that's what he understands and responds to, and I guess respects in some ways. And I'm sure you were doing a good job on top of it. Like he felt that respected that you were standing up for yourself enough. So maybe. Well, the other thing is he's probably yelled at like 200 people before you within the last year and a half. So like you were
they all left.
A few people. Right.
Well, that's the thing too. I think it's probably also that, having somebody that can withstand a certain amount of abuse and take it and be like, because probably a lot of people just quit. It's probably a lot of good-looking girls who quit, and then and I'm sitting there like, yeah, bring it on, Dick. Fuck you. What are you gonna do? Fire
Yeah,
me or
you were the
don't? You know,
opposite.
I'm not gonna quit. I'm gonna get unemployment. So you're gonna fire me or I'm not leaving. You know, so just gotta work it out.
And that's what you yelled at him with several curse words thrown in.
Of course, naturally.
That's cool.
But yeah, so that's the you know the crux of me coming to LA, and you know, I tried to get into film. I was a PA on a couple movies, you know, just shit indie films, and didn't really get into stand up though until I was well into my PR career, you know, which is I guess a little disappointing because I don't know, you know, what I really could have been with stand up. Was good at it, still am good at it, but you know, I've probably done 150, 160 shows, right? You need to do 500 shows to really get your craft perfected. And for me to get into stand up, when I tried to do it, I already had the 9 to 5, and trying to go to the Comedy Store, you know, you had to get there at 3 o'clock to get your 2 minutes in front of a booker, and you got to do it often, and you got to network, and you got to stay till 2 a.m, and you got to, and it became obvious after trying for a few months of that. And you know, I do like a lot. I get booked on shows, but there are always these bringer shows or these big group shows, you know, where your odds of getting somebody that really sees you to bring you back are slim. And after a few months of that, I just went, I can't. It's just not going to happen. And then I started doing independent comedy shows, which were a lot more fun, a lot more fulfilling. You know, bar shows or small theater crowds, and then start producing my own show, Comedy Ahoy, which I did for about 5-6 years. And yeah, still love it. Still love stand up. But something I definitely regret is not trying it earlier. And I'll blame a guy that I still love to this day named Terry Gillespie. He still does stand up in Florida. He was known as Mr. Rubberface on the East Coast. And he was, you know, he toured around, touring comic. He and I went on a road trip to do something or other. I can't remember what it was. Something. And he goes, "Oh, you want to come?" You know, and I was on like spring break, and my parents were like, "Good, take this kid." And I think I was in middle school. So after watching all that stand-up comedy with my dad and knowing Terry as this comic, because my dad and Terry would hang out and just kind of write jokes together, and Terry had his notebook all the time, and he'd go, "Oh, that's good, I'm going to use that." So I said, "All right, let me hang out with Terry." I think he ruined me on doing stand-up comedy as a career, because as we're going, I'm like, "Yeah, I might like to do that someday." Me and my, you know, at my 14, and he goes, "Kid, it's an awful life." He goes, "Don't do it. It's an awful, lonely life. You're always on the road. It's brutal. It's bad pay. It's hard to make it. It's hard to have any relationships." He goes, "It's a terrible life." And I took that to heart.
His life. Yeah, but that's his life. Maybe he's not the only one, but that's his life. That's not every comedian's life.
But it broke me. It's most though. If you talk to a lot of comics, man, it's most comedians' lives.
Sure.
And it broke me on doing comedy where I didn't try it when I first got out here. And I might have gone down that path if I'd started doing it when I first moved out here, when I didn't really have anything going on, you know, canceling shifts, working at a tea house, cooking ramen noodles and gyoza. But I missed the boat on that. So I'm glad I'm still doing it now, just even if it's, you know, here and there, just as more of a hobby than a profession.
Yeah, we'll get into that. More things upcoming, for sure. Tell me about, I guess, Lions of Liberty and anything else you're working on and want to get into with your chronology. I'll kind of give you the floor to bring us up to date.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, Lions of Liberty started back. Ron Paul really inspired me back in 2008 and got me into libertarianism. It was something that was always on the fringes, and then when he ran, he really won me over because everything he said just made sense, and he said it in a very straightforward manner. I appreciate everything about him. You know, the fact that he knew inside out where he was coming from. He was just a very different kind of politician from these people that go out there and don't read anything and just kind of pretend and put on a brave face while they take their money. You know, Ron Paul is a different type of politician. You know, he was very principle first and whip smart.
How come everyone didn't see this?
God, mate. Because people are team players. I mean, that's one thing, you know, with Lions of Liberty, I've come to realize too. And you know, a lot of what I'm doing with Mean Age Daydream on it now is trying to expand how we communicate to people from the aspect of libertarianism and selling people a dream. And tying into what that looks like, what we can tell people is going to make their lives better. And I think that's where Ron Paul, as great as he was, still failed, because he said, the Federal Reserve is ruining your life. He's right. He said, these wars, it's blowback to our actions militaristically overseas. He's right. But the problem was he wasn't preaching to people how he was going to make their lives palpably better. What are you selling people that they can really believe in, from a religious fervor type of view, which is what the other parties have. So anyway, sorry, I'm getting off track.
No, I'm listening. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to bore your audience that, vastly probably is not libertarians. But that inspired me. Ron Paul inspired me. Yeah, well, we'll get him. We'll get him by the end. But I wanted to get involved. I wanted to follow in his footsteps and try to change people and really illuminate what was going on in the world and cut through so much of the obfuscation of government and of the blame game, and trying to get people to really understand the problems that can be solved, but yet people don't understand because they're just not right out there. They're not what the corporate media is pushing. It's not climate change that people are shoving in your face. It's not, whatever the soup du jour of gun violence or teen suicide or Twitter or whatever it might be. Concentrate on those core issues. So that's what we did, and this was a website that we had started that was very popular for a while. Mark Claire, a buddy of mine, had started up the podcast side of things, which then John Odermatt, who I'm currently partners with the Lions of Liberty, had started Finding Freedom, started Felony Friday, focusing on criminal justice. And that was, really important show to talk about how people were just being screwed by the justice system. And then I saw the opportunity, which wasn't really there in the space when I started it. It's now got to be, I don't even know, 10 years ago, to have somebody do a show that is a current events show for libertarian philosophy, but have comedy in it, have irreverence in it. Because libertarians are very self-centered, self-serious people in many ways. And it's an unlikable trait. So I figured I could bring some likability to this movement by starting this podcast. And I'm going to keep it light and I keep it approachable. Of course, what ends up happening is that you start preaching to the choir, and I just start getting pissed off about it. And I think I ostracized more people than I brought in because I'm yelling about this and that and attacking everybody. So now, after getting a little bit burned out on that, the new show, Mean Age Daydream, is trying to adjust a little bit more and try to be a little bit more philosophical, a little bit more inspirational, a little bit more big dream, big think. How can we affect the world while still calling out the bullshit? And I'm hoping that will be more broad-based appeal for people to get involved. And hopefully, after this Trump saga is over, whether he runs or not, then people will be open to listening to a little bit more of libertarian philosophy. So, that's one side of things. As you know, the other side of things is still screenwriting. That is, at the end of the day, the thing I would like to do. I'd like to make movies, specifically movies. I've written some TV, sitcom pilots, and that seems fine. But I know in my heart of hearts, I'd much rather write films. There's movies that, like William Goldman, one of the greatest writers of all time. He wrote Princess Bride, Chinatown. I mean, the guy's unbelievably talented. He is one of the absolute most brilliant comedic writers, one of the most long, remembered comedic and drama writers. That's the type of thing that I wanted to do and leave behind as kind of a legacy. My kids, yes, they'll be here, but I'd like to have something where somebody can turn it on and watch a film and be so touched and inspired and want to watch it again and again and again, where it's anytime it comes on, they want to see that film, and it connects them with memory, it connects them with family, it connects them with friends. There's such, and I'm going to sound like Steven, masturbate myself and make the movie The Fabelman, Spielberg here, but there is truly something about the cinematic experience that is so transcendent through time. And just from a connected perspective, I think is something that if I could just achieve that, I could be happy. Probably never doing anything again and just raising my kids. Having done, if I could just get one movie made, I think I could just be happy and just be a schlub that raises his kids and be happy and get drunk sometimes on weekends and root for the Eagles.
This is not that bad of a plan. Very cool. No, I support all these goals and dreams and hopes and aspirations and plans. We gotta make them plans more than those things. You got to
Yes.
manifest. You got to speak it into existence, as LeVar Ball would say. Oh
You
man,
dropping
that's very
LeVar
cool.
Ball quotes on me here?
Yeah, of course. That's very cool. Good stuff all around. Good conversation. Getting to know you. I thought I did, but maybe I don't entirely. You are you you are deep. You are a deep person.
I
You're
am a
deep.
deep dark well. I don't. It's kind of funny, it's something where I guess not many people know me that well, and that's probably an intentional thing, if I'm being perfectly honest. But
Makes sense though.
yeah, I've had a lot of people. You know what I get most often? I'll tell you what I get most often. I get many people who are friends saying, when I first met you, I really didn't like you. That's what I get a lot. I get it a lot.
Because you're drunk and yelling,
Drunk and
or
yelling,
one
but
of the
just I don't know.
two.
I mean, look, as I said, you go bald at 16. I come across as confident and cocky, and I can be brash, and my sense of humor is very direct, and but I don't pull a lot of punches. And that, and if you don't know me, I can rub you the wrong way immediately, and I do often.
Well, you got to do you. Where can people follow you? Anything else you want to mention? I'll give you the floor to do that.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
your thing.
thank you for having me on, man. It's been awesome. Anybody out there, if you liked my ramblings, you can listen to me ramble weekly at the Lions of Liberty Network podcast, Mean Age Daydream, available on Lions of Liberty Network feed or on Mean Age Daydream. It's got its own feed as well. You could hear me on the Boring Podcast, as you said. That's our comedy podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Brian McWilliams, Brian with an I, or at Lions of Liberty. I check both of those. And hopefully you'll be able to see a film that I do at some point. Or you could check out, if you like superheroes that are very dirty, very vulgar, and libertarian, but a comedy. You can also check out Do Nothing Man. That is my comedic mini series radio plays that hopefully will be made into cartoons at some point in time.
Very cool. Keep those creative juices going. It's inspiring. I appreciate the stories, all of it. And also, February 23rd, you are hosting my next comedy show. I don't have the
Yes.
flyer up for that yet, but it might be out by the time this podcast is out. It probably will be, but you can find that by following me or on Twitter, or I'm sure Brian will post it
I
as
will
well.
definitely
So
share it far and wide, without a doubt.
look,
I already got
yeah,
a couple of my opening jokes written. Don't worry.
yeah. So look out for that. We got a comedy show coming up February 23rd. Me and him and others and more to come on that. But on that note, thank you again. I appreciate it, and I'll talk soon. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Ben. Look forward to it.
You got a peace. So there you go, episode 137 with Brian McWilliams. That was a lot of fun getting to know each other a little bit better. What a deep dude. I appreciate all the stories and insights and inspiration. And I gotta write is basically what we gotta go work on our writing is basically the gist of it. But to follow the show, please check out peoplewelovepodcast.com, at People We Love Podcast on Instagram. I'm at Adam Choid on Instagram and Twitter. Tedeschi Trucks Podcast. That's my music podcast all about the band, at Tedeschi Trucks Podcast, TEDESCHI Trucks Podcast. The editedmovie.com for the short film that I wrote and directed. But I think that's about all I got for today, February 23rd, the comedy show, of course. I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you as always, and let's talk soon. Peace.